I'm the Outreach Manager at the National Women's Law Center. I'd like to thank you all for joining us for today's webinar, Planning for Retirement, What Women Need to Know as They Start Their Careers. Before we get started with the presentations, I just have a few housekeeping notes. So first, all lines will be on mute during today's webinar. We will be taking questions after our experts are finished with their presentations, but you can submit questions throughout the webinar by typing it into the designated area in your webinar control panel and hitting send. Please note that we will also be recording today's webinar, and you'll receive a link to the recording of the presentation as well as to the PowerPoint slides and additional resources within the next few days. Today you will hear presentations from 3 of our experts. First, Jennifer Wang, who is the Policy Director at Young Invincibles. Then from Amy Matsui, Senior Counsel at the National Women's Law Center. And finally from Joan Entmacher, who is Vice President for Family Economic Security at the National Women's Law Center. So before we start the presentations, we would just like to get a better idea of who all is joining us on today's webinar. So we have some polls. So very shortly you're going to see a poll come up on your screen that says what year were you born. So the poll should be up on your screen at this point. So please just go ahead and answer which year you were born in the category. I will give it just a few more seconds for folks to respond. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and close down the poll at this point. So it looks like we have 28% of our participants were born from 1988 to 2000. 32% were born from 1980 to 1987. 19% were born from 65 to 79, and 21% from 46 to 64. So the next poll question is going to ask you what best describes your savings habits. So please just go ahead and read through the different options there and respond with whichever best describes what your current savings habits are. And again, we'll just give it a few more seconds for people to respond. It looks like most people on the webinar have responded at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. Okay, so it looks like 19% of people are not saving because they're paying off student loans or other pieces. 2% are savings for only a big purchase. 14% are saving for emergencies. 19% are saving for retirement, and 46% are saving for some or all of the above, so some combination of those options. And our final question is, if you are not saving, what are the reasons that you are not saving? And so this one you can actually choose multiple options. You should be able to choose multiple options. So if you see that student loan debt and caregiving expenses or other debt is keeping you from saving, you're able to just let us know that. So again, I will give you all a few more seconds just to go ahead and respond to that, especially since there are a few different options here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. So it looks like 48% of people are not saving primarily due to student loan debt, 69% rent and mortgage or other living expenses, 13% for caregiving expenses, 25% for other debt, and 13% for another reason why they may not be saving. So at this point, I will close the polls, and I will turn the floor over to Jennifer. So Jennifer, take it away.
Hi everyone, my name is Jennifer Wang. I'm the Policy Director at a national nonprofit organization called Young Invincibles. Young Invincibles has been around for about 6 years, and we are a young adult economic empowerment organization. We focus mostly in 3 main issue areas, and those are higher education, healthcare, and jobs in the economy. And we started becoming more and more interested in retirement when we performed a literature review about young people and their views and perspectives on financial security. And we found some very interesting trends that are unique to young people today. And many of them are actually concerning to us because of what we know about young adults today and student loan debt. And so I have a few findings to share with you all to give you all some flavor about why we're so interested in retirement and financial security. So we did some research and we found that millennials, who are people who are currently between the ages of 18 and 34, have lower incomes and higher debt, and are struggling to put money away for the future. And we looked at an analysis by Moody's, which found that millennials have a negative 2% savings rate, compared with a positive 3% savings rate for older people, 35 to 44 years old. So I'll just repeat that. People between the ages of 18 and 34 have a negative 2% savings rate, indicating that they're not saving. And people between the ages of 35 and 44 have a positive 3% savings rate. So that indicates that more or less they are saving. We dug a little deeper and we found that only 55% of millennials, again that's folks ages 18 to 34, reported that they are saving for retirement. Most of them are saving, of the people who are saving, they're saving less than 5% of their income for retirement. You know, I think that that is pretty striking given what Amy and Joan are going to share with you all today about the importance of saving for retirement and starting early. Lastly, I'll close on the point that, you know, I think millennials are very optimistic about their future and about their ability to save for the future, but there are some inequities that we're very concerned about. One of them is the high incidence of young people with very large amounts of student loan debt. I'm also very concerned about racial inequality in the financial space, and I'm also very concerned that folks are putting more money toward education expenses, rent, and just everyday necessities and not having enough to save at the end of the day. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Amy Matsui from the National Women's Law Center. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. We're delighted to be participating on this webinar today on what we think is a really important topic for a lot of the reasons. The National Women's Law Center is a national nonpartisan nonprofit, and we have been working for over 40 years to increase the opportunities for women and girls. One of our particular areas of concern is the economic security of women and their families, and that really hits home for the topic of today's webinar. So we are aware that, especially as women are starting their careers out today, they're facing a number of challenges in financial and economic security along the lines that Jennifer described. And we're kind of asking you to look around the curve and look down a far ways down the road and think about retirement when you're kind of struggling to make ends meet every day and you're just starting your careers. But we're going to cover why that's important. So as part of this exercise of looking down the road, we want to start by talking through what are the sources of income that you're going to rely on in your retirement. These include Social Security, pensions, retirement savings, other savings and investments, and then increasingly earnings from work. And the way to kind of think about these and how they're going to fit together for you is a little bit of a pyramid where Social Security is really going to be the foundation of retirement income, and then the other sources of income are going to add on top of that. And let's see how that's going to happen. Next slide, please. So women in particular are are the focus of this webinar, not just because we're the National Women's Law Center, but to look at the fact that women need more retirement income than men do. That's because women statistically are likely to live longer. They're also more likely to need more income because of health concerns. They're more likely to have chronic illnesses or need long-term care. And in addition, in part because the longer lifespan, women are more likely to be single in old age. And as a result, nearly 1 out of 5 women above the age of 65 and living alone are under the poverty line. Next slide, please. Unfortunately, for a number of factors that many of you on the call will identify with, women are less able to accumulate the retirement income that they are going to desperately need. First of all, there is a wage gap. Women earn less than men. Second, women are more likely to be low-wage workers, and that means that their income is depressed and more unstable to begin with. Women are more likely to take time out of the workforce either to care for children, at some point to care for elderly or ill spouses or other relatives, and that can take a toll on their work history. Also, women are more likely than men to work part-time. And then finally, women tend to be more financially impacted if they are married and go through a divorce. Next slide. So that's one of the reasons that it's really important for women to start saving early and often. It's always the right time to start saving for retirement. And here's an example of this. If starting at age 25 and thinking that you're going to aim for retiring at age 65, so that's a 40-year work period or investment period. If you invest $2,000 a year for 40 years, and you assume a 4% growth, you will end up with a nest egg of over $150,000. So in this case, time is really on your side, and it can help your savings grow. Next slide, please. So in today's webinar, we're going to talk about having the knowledge and the tools to help you make the most of that time and get best prepared for retirement. We're going to cover the basics of pensions and retirement savings and Social Security, and we'll talk through some tips about how to prepare yourself to be ready for retirement throughout your career, and especially now when you're just starting out. On October 29th, we also want to alert you that we're going to host another webinar with more detailed information for folks who are closer to retirement age and focusing specifically on Social Security and the optimal time to claim it. Next slide, please. So we're going to start out with the most significant ways that people can save for retirement while they're working and throughout their careers. These are going to include traditional pensions, also known as defined benefit plans. It includes employment-based retirement savings plans. They're also known as defined contribution plans, but most people are familiar or most familiar with one particular type, which is the 401k. And then finally, we're going to cover individual retirement accounts, which are not necessarily connected to the workplace. Next slide, please. There we go. So the first topic that we're going to cover is the traditional or defined benefit pension. But unfortunately, I want to let you know ahead of time that these are increasingly rare. They have the number of traditional pension plans have declined over time, and they're less and less available to workers. This is unfortunate, especially for women, because defined benefit pensions or traditional pensions don't require a contribution from a worker. The funding and the investments are all taken care of by employers. In addition, defined benefit or traditional pensions give workers a paycheck for life, and because women tend to live longer, this can be especially important for them. Another thing that you should know about defined benefit pensions is that the way that you get the benefit and the way that the benefit is calculated is based usually on a formula which may take into account the worker's age, the worker's the time that the worker spent with the employer, and the salary that the worker had at its maximum. There's no employee contribution. There's no, as it says here, investment risk or worry about investment decisions for these payments to eventually start at retirement age. But unfortunately, as I mentioned, there are fewer and fewer defined benefit or traditional pensions available. So let's go on to the next slide, which covers the kind of retirement savings plan that most people may have access to if they have access to a retirement plan at work. These are savings plans like 401ks, but they also include stock ownership plans, 403bs for nonprofits and educational institutions, and simplified employee pensions, or SEPs. And these are also called, as I mentioned, defined contribution plans. So the way that a retirement savings plan at work, like a 401k plan works, is that employees contribute part of their salary to the plan. Often, employers will also contribute a matching payment if employees pay in enough. As the slide says, you can contribute in 2015 over $17,000 a year. If you're over age 50, you can add an additional $5,500 on top of that. And the way that the investments are going to grow are that as an employee pays in contributions, investments that are chosen from a number that are offered as selections by the employer, the investments are going to grow over time. And then earnings and expenses are also going to affect what the balance is. When you reach retirement age, you can start taking money out of the 401k plan without a tax penalty. But unfortunately, because you as the employee have to choose how to invest it, that is a risk that the employee bears. And then in addition, when it comes to retirement, whatever amount of money you have in the account, you have to decide how you're going to make that last or fund you through your retirement. I'll also note that one way that an employer retirement savings plan is different from a regular savings or bank account is that there is a tax penalty that generally applies if someone takes money out of the account before they hit the age of 59 and a half. And this has a couple of exceptions, but for the most part, that's how the money is designed to be protected for your retirement. Next slide, please. So in addition to defined contribution plans and defined benefit traditional pensions, a lot of you are probably familiar with an individual retirement account. You may have one because you've rolled over savings from some of your employers. You may have inherited one, or you may just know someone or your parents that has an IRA. This is an account that's set up by an individual with a financial service provider. So this can be Fidelity, it can be through some banks, but it's an individual account that's set up between an individual and a provider. If you are not participating within a retirement savings plan at work, you can have the contributions, the money that you put in an IRA, not count against your taxable income. And so that's a benefit that you can get for an IRA contribution. And I should have mentioned that for 401ks, in the same way, when you contribute part of your salary to the 401k, that also is not count as taxable income. So that can lower your tax bill when your tax return needs to be filed. The last thing that I'll mention about an IRA is that just like a 401k, if you, with certain exceptions, take money out of the account before age 59 and a half, there's a tax penalty. And if you have a traditional IRA, there is an alternative form of IRA called a Roth IRA, under which you do pay taxes on your contributions, but then when you take money out, there's no tax on that withdrawal as income. So those are two different types of IRAs. Next slide, please. So in addition to an IRA, recently the Department of the Treasury came up with a version of the IRA for savers with lower on the lower income of the scale. And so this is really targeted in part at young savers who are really getting going and who may not have any access to a retirement plan at work. So the Myra is, as I mentioned, for savers who are earning under $129,000 or $191,000 for a married couple. They don't have retirement accounts at work, but they're employed. So they can make automatic payroll deposits into these accounts through the Treasury Department. The funds are very safe. They're invested in Treasury bonds, and because of the investments, there aren't any fees. The structure of the Myra is a Roth, so that your contributions are taxed, but the withdrawals are not. And from a Myra, the contributions can be withdrawn tax-free. Finally, when the Myra grows to $15,000, it can be rolled over to a private company. And then that can kind of follow you throughout your career, and you can continue to contribute to that. Next slide, please. So another tool that you should know about, in addition to the kinds of savings vehicles that you can use, whether it's traditional pension or a 401k plan, an IRA or a Myra, there is a tax credit for savers that focuses specifically on retirement savings. For low and moderate income workers, so that means singles who are earning up to about $27,700 and married couples who are earning a little over $55,000, they can be eligible for a non-refundable tax credit. It can be worth up to $1,000 or $2,000 for married couples filing jointly, based on the contributions that they've made to 401k type plans, IRAs, or Myras. So depending on what the worker's income is, the credit is worth a certain percentage of each dollar that's saved in one of these accounts. Next slide, please. So as you're starting out your career, how do you get started saving? So the first thing that you can do is find out whether you have a pension or retirement savings plan at work. Then you need to find out if you're eligible. The plan may not allow you to participate unless you've been working for the company for a certain amount of time. You may have an age requirement. They might not let you start if you're under the age of 21. And then in addition, as we'll touch on later, some employers will require workers to have a certain minimum amount of hours. So once you've found out whether or not you're eligible to save at work, you need to find out how to enroll. This usually coincides with the open enrollment period when you're also enrolling for health insurance. You may have cafeteria plan accounts, and this is the time when you can find out about the retirement savings options at work. For some 401k plans, workers can be automatically enrolled, and then if they don't want to participate, they have to let the employer know that they want to opt out. Next slide. So as you get started, as your budget is tightest, you're facing student debt, you have other consumer debt or other things that you're trying to save for, you can start small, but it's important to start. As the chart that we looked at earlier in the presentation shows, the longer you have that you're saving, even if it's small amounts, it can really add up and grow over time. In addition, some plans will allow you to automatically increase the amount that you're contributing to the plan, and that can help you work your way up as your salary increases or you get bonuses. Those are ways that you can up your contributions and save more as you're better able to do so. And then finally, often for 401k type plans, employers will not begin to provide a match for your contributions until they hit a certain level. So if your employer has that kind of minimum contribution level before the match kicks in, that's a great benchmark to be aiming at, to try and save at the level that allows you to get free money from your employer. Next slide, please. So on this next slide, we're just talking about some of the documents that will give you important information about your plan. One is called the Summary Plan Description. You will get it possibly in electronic form when you enroll, and the SPD will talk about eligibility, how the benefit is earned, how it's paid, and importantly, how to get the benefits when you need it. In addition, you should receive benefit statements once you're enrolled in the plan. If you have a traditional pension, you may not get it every year. You'll get that every third year or so. But for a 401k or other type of plan, you'll get the benefit statement more regularly. This may also include a consideration of it may mention Social Security benefits. It may mention the time when you'll have full access or ownership over different kinds of benefits. But it's an important document for you to keep track of as you're working. Next slide. So as you're working, there are always kind of bumps in the road. And one question that people have is, what if I need the money that I am saving? So, you know, if you've been working hard and managing your budget and keeping an eye on everything, and you are managing to put money away for retirement, it's not uncommon for people to have emergencies or need big access to some emergency funds, and the retirement account can be a really attractive place and a source of available funds. If you have a traditional defined benefit pension plan, you generally cannot take out money from the plan because those benefits don't really accrue until the end of your time there when you're retiring, and you may not have full ownership over them. It is possible, depending on the rules of your particular plan, for you to take out a loan or hardship distribution from a 401k defined contribution type retirement savings account. So it's going to depend on the plan rules, so that's something that the summary plan description will be able to give you information about. You should also know that unless it's a Roth structured retirement savings plan, you may be subject to a 10% tax penalty if you take money out before you turn 59.5, and then the money that you take out is also going to be subject to a regular income tax. If you've taken out a loan, which you can take out up to generally 50% of the account or a $50,000 maximum, you will have to pay it back over a certain amount of time, but if you leave your job, you may have to pay it back immediately. And then finally, just remembering the time value of money and the ability of time to increase your investments, when you take money out, you reduce your future retirement income. IRAs and Myras have different rules. As I mentioned, Myras don't have tax on distributions, and both IRAs and Myras have exceptions for paying higher education expenses and for first-time home buyers to be able to take money out of IRAs and Myras without a tax penalty. So there are specific rules for those. Next slide. Next slide, please. There we go. So as I mentioned, if you're a part-time worker, you may not be covered by your retirement plan, but if you are, try and stay at the minimum contribution level to be able to get a match. If you're not able to save at work because you're working part-time, make sure that you're thinking about IRAs, or if not an IRA, you might be able to open a Myra. Next slide, please. When you leave your job, one thing that you should have kind of at the top of your list as you're transitioning to whatever your next step is what's going to happen to your retirement benefits if you've had any at work. If you have a traditional pension, one question is how long you worked with your employer, because that's going to determine kind of how much ownership you have over the benefits. The kind of technical term for that is that your benefits have vested. And even if your benefits have vested, even if you never go back to that employer again, you will be able to get a retirement benefit at the end of your career. But if you haven't worked that minimum amount, then you may lose your benefit if you don't go back to work for the same employer. If you have a retirement savings plan, like a 401k, you always own your own contributions, and there's a vesting schedule for whatever your employer has has contributed. Your employer can force you to take the money out of your plan, but if you have over $1,000, they're going to put that money, the retirement funds and savings, into an IRA. But if you have over, and I'm sorry, that should be $5,000 in savings in your account, you can keep it in the retirement plan. You just can't contribute anything if you're no longer working for your employer. But you can also roll over those account balances into an IRA. If your new employer has a retirement savings plan, you can put the money in there as well. And that way you're keeping the savings that you've already worked so hard to accumulate and keeping those for retirement. Next slide. So kind of some of the same considerations for if you're a part-time worker. If you can't find work or you decide to stay home for a while, if you've got kids and you're caregiving, what can you do with those retirement savings? The first is, if you can, please try not to use them as an emergency fund. Try not to spend them. So keep them growing to the extent that you can. Not only will that take resources away from your future retirement income, but it also could make a tax penalty kick in. Next slide, please. So kind of the last topic I want to cover with regard to retirement savings is that married couples face very specific issues with regard to retirement savings. So the pensions and retirement savings can be marital assets, because if someone is working while married, some portion of them, of the retirement savings, can belong to the spouse. That gets expressed in a number of ways. So if you have a 401k plan, you have to decide who is going to get those benefits, your savings, if you die. And if you're married and you're working for the employer and contributing to a 401k account, unless your spouse agrees, your spouse has to be the beneficiary. If you get the spouse's consent, a child or your sister or your parents or anybody else can be the beneficiary. But unless you get the agreement of your spouse, the spouse is going to be the recipient of the 401k plan. In addition, spousal consent is required for loans for 401ks. Defined benefit plans have special benefits for spouses that are called survivor benefits, so that if the worker dies, unless the spouse has agreed not to receive these benefits, the spouse can get a payment for life as a result of that pension. And then finally, when couples divorce, pensions, 401k plans, IRAs can often be one of the biggest assets in a marriage. And so it's very important for the attorneys in the case of a divorce to know what the retirement savings are, how to be in touch with the plan administrators so that they can value and divide the accounts equitably and according to the law. So at this point, we're going to leave the realm of retirement savings at work and IRAs and Myras, and I'm going to turn it over to Joan Entmacher, who's going to talk a little bit about Social Security and the things that you need to know about as you start your careers. Joan?
Thank you. And many of you who are nowhere near your retirement age may be wondering why we are talking about Social Security in a webinar for younger workers. And there are three reasons. First, as Amy said, Social Security will play an important role in your retirement. For most workers, and especially for women, it is the largest source of retirement income, so you should understand it. Second, as a young worker, you should know that Social Security isn't just for retirement. It also provides disability and life insurance protection to young workers and their families. And third, because you may know people who are nearing retirement age, and hopefully we will give you a little information that you might want to share with them. Next slide, please. So, why is Social Security so important for people's retirement, especially for women? First of all, it's virtually universal and portable between jobs. About 96% of all workers are covered by Social Security. Amy pointed out that if you work part-time, you may not be able to participate in your employer's pension plan. Your employer may not offer a pension plan. Apart from some state and local government jobs where they generally have their own particular pension plans, everything, including part-time work and self-employment, is covered by Social Security. The second big advantage is that, as Amy said, you build up a nest egg, hopefully, by saving for retirement. But then when you get to retirement age, you have to think about how are you going to make that money that you saved last for the rest of your life, because you don't know how long you're going to live. Defined benefit pensions are disappearing. Well, Social Security is a defined benefit pension. The benefits last as long as you live, and if there is inflation that year, the benefits in Social Security are adjusted to keep up with it. And third, Social Security is a family insurance plan that provides automatic benefits to spouses and surviving spouses and divorced spouses if there's been a 10-year marriage. You don't have to get a lawyer to represent you during a divorce. You bring your papers showing that you were married and when you divorced to the Social Security office, and it doesn't affect your ex-spouse's benefits, so there doesn't need to be a fight about it. So as a result, especially for women, Social Security provides over 60% of their retirement income on average. And it's really critical because without Social Security, about half of older women would fall into poverty. So this is something to really know about. Next slide. Now, many of you may be listening to this and thinking, well, that's all very nice for my parents and grandparents, but I'll never see Social Security. We know from polling data that that's a widespread belief, but it's wrong. The fact is the baby boomers are not about to bankrupt Social Security. People saw the boomers coming and their retirement, and about 30 years ago, Social Security payroll taxes were increased, the retirement age was raised, and Social Security started building up a surplus to prepare for the retirement of the baby boomers. And in 2015, the extra funds in Social Security that aren't needed to pay benefits right away total $2.9 trillion, that's with a T, in surplus funds. That's the Social Security Trust Fund that's invested in interest-bearing U.S. Treasury bonds. The combination of those trust funds and the interest on the bonds with the payroll taxes that workers are paying into Social Security are enough to pay 100% of promised benefits until 2034. So what happens in 2034? Social Security does not go bust. Workers will continue to get 79% of the benefits that they are promised under current law. 75, how can that possibly be? Well, because workers will still be paying payroll taxes into Social Security. Now, getting 79% of what you should get is not good enough, but it's a manageable shortfall, and it's almost 20 years away. And that's the shortfall if Congress does nothing about it for the next 20 years. And if they were willing to raise taxes on people who earn over $118,500 a year, beyond that amount you don't pay into Social Security, that would go a very long way to making sure that we can pay 100% of all benefits and even improve them. So this is something that all young people should know. Yes, Social Security is there. We need to make it stronger and better, but this is definitely something we can do. Next slide. Okay, so how do you qualify for Social Security? Basically, when you work and pay taxes for Social Security in covered employment, you earn credits toward benefits. And again, with the exception of some state and local jobs, basically all private employment, most government employment, and self-employment are covered. It doesn't take a lot of earnings to get a credit towards Social Security. In 2015, $1,220 earns you 1 credit, $4,880 of earnings and earns you 4 credits, and basically you need 40 credits or 10 years worth of earnings to be eligible for Social Security. Now, with 10 years of earnings, you'll be eligible for Social Security, but you won't have a very large benefit. To calculate your benefit, 2 things matter: how much you earned. If you earn more than the minimum for a credit, that counts toward raising your benefit. And extra years of earnings are important because Social Security averages your highest 35 years of earnings to determine what your benefit will be. Your benefit is higher the more money you've made over your lifetime, but the benefit as a percentage of what you earn during your working life is actually higher as a percentage for lower income people. So lower income people get a relatively higher benefit, although it's less in dollars than for higher earners. Okay, next slide. What do you have to do about Social Security while you're working? Well, compared to enrolling in a 401k or IRA, Social Security is really easy. If you're employed in a job that's covered by Social Security, your employer will deduct contributions from your paycheck, send them to Social Security, and match them, and you don't have to do anything. If you're self-employed, when you pay your income tax reporting that income, you'll also report that income for self-employment tax, pay that tax, and earn Social Security credits on that self-employment income. One thing you should do while you're working is to keep track of your contributions and estimated benefits by going to ssa.gov and signing up for a My Social Security account. This does 2 important things. First, it allows you to check that your employer has accurately reported your earnings to Social Security. This is particularly important to do if you change your name when you're married, just to make sure that, you know, all of your, I mean, they should have your number, but make sure that everything is there and accurately reported. And you can also see what your benefits would be, you know, what your disability and survivor protections look like. And they have calculators where you can see what your benefit would be if you continue to go on working. Next slide. So if you work part-time with Social Security, it's really easy. If you are working in a summer job, you made $2,500 this year, you'll get 2 credits. If you work part-time for the same amount next year, get another 2 credits. That's the equivalent of 1 year. So part-time work is really easy to count toward Social Security. If you take time out of the workforce, as long as you have at least 10 years, you will qualify for Social Security. But as I said, they'll look to see how much you earned in your 35 highest years. So if you only work 10 years, you'll have a lot of zeros and your benefits will be less. One good thing about Social Security is that timing is less important than it is for savings. Amy talked about how valuable it is to start saving early so that your savings can compound over time. With Social Security, if you take time out of the workforce when you're fairly young to raise children and say, oh, I better keep working as I get closer to my retirement age, get some extra years of earnings in there, it doesn't matter when you earn that money. You can do your catching up later. Next slide. So how much are average Social Security benefits? They're pretty modest, especially for women, $13,500 a year on average for women 65 and older, $17,600 for men 65 and older. So that's not a lot. How can you increase them? Well, today we're focusing on things that you can do personally to increase your benefits. Obviously, there's a political discussion going on with some policymakers recommending increases in benefits and others making recommendations to cut them, but we're focusing on what you can do personally. As I mentioned, one way, if you've had years out of the workforce, is to have additional years of earnings. The second thing you can do is by waiting to claim your benefits. Next slide. So you can claim Social Security retirement benefits as early as age 62 and age 60 if you're widowed. And if you need Social Security to live on, you should take it. That's what it's there for. You've earned it. But if you've got some savings that can cover your expenses, or maybe you can go on working part-time and with a little bit of your savings and wait to claim Social Security, you can get higher Social Security benefits that will last for the rest of your life. And as Amy said, this is especially important for women because they tend to live longer, and Social Security provides income that you can count on and is adjusted for inflation. Next slide. This slide illustrates how much benefits increase for someone who can wait to claim Social Security. And this is an example for someone whose full retirement age is 66. That the full retirement age is the age at which you can get unreduced benefits. Below that, benefits are reduced. Above that, if you wait, benefits are increased. So Martina was born in 1949. She's retiring this year. She's 66. She waits until her full retirement age to get her benefit, which is $1,000 based on her earnings. If she had claimed it at 62, her benefit would have been 25% less, $750. And if she claimed it at 62, that $750 would be her monthly benefit for the rest of her life. It wouldn't bump up when she reached 66. If instead of claiming it this year, she waits until she's 70, her monthly benefit goes up to $1,320 a month. That's 32% more than if she claimed it at 62. And that's the benefit she'll get for the rest of her life. So that benefit for waiting, every year after age 66 is 8% guaranteed per year, plus a cost of living adjustment. There are no private investments out there that can guarantee you that kind of a rate of return. It really, most private investment analysts will say this is, one of the best deals around if you can afford to wait. Obviously, not for people who have to skip meals and skip medications in order to do it. But if you can afford it, it's really important. And you don't have to wait to age 70. Every year that you can wait gives you an increase in benefits. Next slide. The last point I want to make is that Social Security is a family insurance plan. It provides benefits for retired workers and their spouses, surviving spouses, and divorced spouses. And this slide briefly explains that they can be worth up to 50% of your spouse's benefit or your own worker benefit, whichever is higher. And as a surviving spouse, it can be worth up to 100% of your deceased spouse's benefit or your own worker benefit, whichever is higher. So I say up to 50% or 100% because these spousal benefits can be reduced if you or your spouse claims benefits before your full retirement age. Now, these rules are a little complicated, and we'll have a lot more to say about them on October 29th. But there is one tip I wanted to share with you today and hope that you will share with people you know who are nearing retirement age, which is that the benefit for a surviving spouse depends on when the higher earning spouse earns benefits. So this is a decision that couples really need to talk about and make together. So with that, I will turn it back to Amy.
Thank you, Joan. Next slide, please. So what we're going to do to close out the webinar is talk a little bit about kind of some tips and tools, both about retirement savings and Social Security, that you should think about as you're working through your career. But to start off with, we know that it's a serious concern, as Jennifer was pointing out at the beginning of the webinar, that young people at the beginning of their careers are strapped. So saving is incredibly tough on a tight budget, but just remember how much the payoff can be. So here's a quick example. If you start saving at 25, $2,000 a year for 40 years, earnings grow at 4% annually, you'll have a nest egg of over $150,000. But if you wait even until you're 35 and save the same amount, you'll end up with 1/3 less in savings, about $98,000. Even, you're looking at this and you're saying, I do all this savings, and really, what can $155,000 buy me when I retire? Honestly, if you are 65 years old right now and bought an annuity, a monthly payment with $155,000, you would get an extra $800 or more per month. So when you add that to your Social Security benefit, and as Joan mentioned, the average is just over $1,000 a month, that can really make a difference for your standard of living in retirement. So any little bit you can save makes a difference, and the longer you're able to do it can make an even bigger difference. Next slide, please. So now that you have the basics of Social Security, retirement savings, and some thoughts about how you can save for retirement when you have other debt and other responsibilities, let's start looking at a couple of things that you can look at, and especially in your 20s and 30s. Next slide. So as you're saving, just a couple of hints here that you probably have heard about before, which is that you can structure your budget so that you have 50% of your budget going for fixed costs, 20% going for your longer-term financial goals, which can include retirement savings, saving for a house or a car, possibly saving for children's education. So that can be about 20% of your budget, and then the 30% that remains is for flexible spending, costs that you can try and adjust, and whatever bonus you can save out of that, you can put back into the financial goals. Look really carefully at your debt and try and pay down the higher interest loans, whether it's student loan payments or consumer debt, credit card debt. And then the last suggestion, if it's humanly possible, is to create a small emergency fund so that you're not tempted to dip into your retirement savings when you have an emergency. And you can say to yourself, where am I going to get that extra cash that for an emergency fund? This is a good place to think about putting your tax refund, or if you get a bonus at work, or if you have an increase in pay, to put some of that away so that you don't have to dip into your retirement savings. Next slide. So just to go over some basics, when you're in your 20s and just starting out your career, find out if you have a retirement plan at work. If you can, sign up, try and qualify for your employer match, and if not, start an IRA or a Myra. You might not be able to save as much, but you can do it through payroll deductions in a lot of cases, and you at least will be starting something. And then for whatever you're able to save, check to see if you're eligible to claim the saver's credit at tax time, and that can further reduce your tax bill. Find out if your job's covered by Social Security, and if it is, keep track of your Social Security benefits and check your employer contributions by signing up with SSA.gov. And then, although this is the last point on the slide, it's the understatement of the year of how difficult this is, but managing consumer and student loan debt is one of the critical things that you can do to enable yourself to save for retirement. Next slide, please. In your 30s, continue to participate in any retirement plan that you're offered at work, and then try and bump up when you get a raise. If you can't save at work, IRAs or Myras are great options. Claiming the saver's credit will also reduce your tax bill, reducing your debt, keeping track of Social Security benefits, and then consider consulting a financial advisor or an investment advisor. They can help you strategize about what debt to pay down, and how to manage saving for multiple goals at once, whether it's a house, a car, saving for expenses for kids, or paying down your debt. The next slide is going to cover your 40s, and the last one, your 50s. These are available for you to look at when we circulate the PowerPoint after the presentation, and then we'll also touch on some of these points as well in the webinar that's scheduled for October 29th, focusing on Social Security. So before we open the floor up for questions, we have a couple of pages of resources after the checklist slides. So we have resources that are offered by the National Women's Law Center. We have some other sources that are from everything from government to other nonprofits that work on retirement security. And then last but not least, I think we have some resources on ways that you can try and pay down your student debt, which we know is such a concern for young workers. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Amanda so we can have some questions from the audience.
Great. Thanks so much, Amy, and thanks to all of our presenters today. At this point, we do have some time for questions and answers. Just as a reminder to everyone, after this webinar, in the next day or two, you will get an email that has a link to this webinar recording, as well as the slides and the different resources that were mentioned today. So you can certainly revisit them after this presentation, and also we encourage you to share them with your friends and your family. So one question that has come in from a couple people is if you're self-employed, or if you're, if you sort of operate from gig to gig, how can people save in that situation?
So this is Amy. You may not be able to participate in an employer plan if you're working on contract or from job to job, or if you are not kind of in what is a formal structured employee-employer relationship. So this is the time when you can rely on IRAs or Myras if you have the wherewithal to do some saving. Joan?
Yeah, just a reminder that if you're self-employed, when you pay your taxes and report that income, you also are reporting it to Social Security. You're, yes, paying your Social Security taxes on it, but you're also earning credits to Social Security. So that will enable you to get a defined benefit pension even though you're self-employed or working, as a freelancer on different projects. So pay your taxes, pay your Social Security taxes, and get your credits toward your defined benefit pension through Social Security.
Joan, we have a Social Security question that says, is Social Security only available to U.S. citizens, or does it cover legal residents as well?
It covers all people who are legally present in the United States who have worked and contributed to Social Security. So people who are not citizens but have a green card and a Social Security number certainly earn benefits. The other thing that is possible is if you have been working and then become legally present, get a Social Security number, and can show that you have been working and paying into Social Security, but it hasn't been credited to your Social Security number. When you are lawfully present in the U.S., you can collect those benefits, so it's not limited to U.S. citizens. But you do need to have worked and paid into Social Security, and you do need to be lawfully present in the United States when you seek to collect your benefits.
Great, thank you. We have another question about what happens to your retirement plan when you change jobs. Amy, could you talk about what people need to do to roll over their accounts?
Absolutely. So if you have a 401k plan at work, if you have saved over $5,000, you can just leave the money where it is. So it can continue to grow. You can't add any more money to it, but you can certainly leave it in your employer's plan if you have over $5,000. If you want to and your new employer has a 401k plan that allows it, you can also roll any savings that you have into your new employer's plan. So that would be a seamless way for you to take the money that you've already earned and keep it growing in your new employer's account. Your third option is to take the money that you have, the funds that have accumulated and the earnings that go along with it from your old job, and roll it into an IRA. You have to look carefully at the fees that the IRA is going to charge and look at the investments that are available to you in the IRA, but at least if you put it into an IRA, you're continuing to save that money for retirement. The concern is that if you take the money out, first of all, you're going to get hit with taxes and a tax penalty, but then you don't have the ability to have that money continue to grow for your future retirement security. So if it's humanly possible, and there are lots of easy ways for this to happen, for example, if you have between $1,000 and $5,000, your employer will roll it over into an IRA for you. So they're doing that work. The best option, if you can afford to, is to keep your retirement savings growing by rolling it into an IRA, into a new employer plan, or keeping it with your old employer's plan.
Thanks, Amy. We have a question about if there is a minimum amount of savings that people should, that people must have in order to get the Savers Credit.
So as long as you have any savings at all, starting at $1, you can get the Savers Credit. It's not going to give you a big credit, but as long as you have made some contributions to a retirement savings plan in the tax year and you're under the income limits, any savings at all can be available for a Savers Credit amount.
Okay. Is there a minimum retirement amount sort of recommended for people who are millennials now, right, who will be retiring in a matter of decades? We know that it sort of depends on lifestyle and other savings, but are there projections on how much you would recommend that people aim to save?
So that's a really complicated question, and it may be one that a financial advisor and obviously you want to make sure that you're going to somebody who's reputable and is going to give you good, sound financial advice, and we can send around some resources that could help you do that. But because your retirement is going to depend on what your Social Security benefits are going to be, if you have, if you own your own home, the cost of living where you're going to be retiring, there are a number of factors which determine the target amount that you want to have saved for retirement and then how you plan to get there. So it really is going to depend on individual circumstances. And at this point in your careers, I think I'd be more focused on saving as much as you can. And then, once you're a little bit more established in your situation and your assets and kind of what you can reasonably expect in your work life, settle down a little bit, a financial advisor can help you figure out what your savings goal is and the best way to get there.
Thanks, Amy. I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. So let's see. It looks like there's a question about, is there a limit to how many retirements someone can have, and is there a benefit to having more than one, or should you concentrate it all in one place?
That's a really good question. Again, that's one which is going to depend on every person's circumstance. As we mentioned, there are a couple of different retirement savings vehicles, and they have different tax consequences. So if you have, a 401k, if you have a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA, it's just going to depend for each individual and their family whether it makes sense to consolidate if you can because of tax laws, or if there are different tax consequences for each kind of savings plan. Putting all of those pieces together is complicated and is going to be different for each individual and family.
Thanks, Amy. So I see that we have more questions than we have time, so I'm just going to put up this slide with our presenters. And thank you all again so much for joining us today for the presentations. At this point, I'd like to see Amy, Joan, or Jennifer, if you have any closing thoughts that you'd like to share with us.
No, just thank you to everybody for joining us today.
Yes,
thank you so much.
Very much.
All right. Well, thanks so much, everyone. This concludes today's webinar. After you close out, you'll get a prompt to take just a short survey to give us some feedback on how useful you find this. So we would encourage you to please take that and share your thoughts with us. And thank you all again for joining today's webinar. Please look out for the slides and the recording within the next couple days. Thank you all, and have a good afternoon.